Have you ever wondered what's happening with India's economy? Well, we hear so many different stories. Sometimes it's India is booming, and other times the economy is struggling. So, what's the real truth? What's really happening with India's economy? Well, today we're going to break down the real story of India's economy in clear, simple terms. No fancy jargons, but just straightforward facts. I've been studying the detailed report called the Indus Valley Annual Report by Blume Ventures. It's a 188-page long document, but don't worry, I have picked the 7 most important points that explain what's really going on. Let's get into it. Here's what I've selected. How India recovered from COVID but had to slow down because of rising prices. Why Indians are spending more but saving less. Why there are actually 3 Indias and not just one big market. The truth about India's so-called growing middle class. Why India is struggling to becoming a manufacturing powerhouse like China. How 10-minute delivery is changing shopping in metropolitan cities. And lastly, what's really happening with India's startup ecosystem. Let's dive in and understand the real India. Well, remember when COVID hit way back in 2020? Well, India's economy took one of the biggest hits in the world. Business activity dropped by a shocking 24.4% in just 3 months. It was the worst drop since India became independent in 1947. And when the country went into a lockdown, everything almost stopped. Factories closed, shops shut down, and millions of people, especially daily wage workers, lost their incomes overnight. And to fix this crisis, the government took some really big steps. They spent a lot more money on public projects, close to 76.5%. They sent direct cash transfers to people's bank accounts, close to 68%. Banks kept interest rates very low at 4% so that people could borrow easily. And these actions worked in the short term. The economy bounced back strongly, growing by 9.7% just the next year. But that quick recovery created its own problems. Prices started rising too much. And when too much money chases too fewer goods, everything becomes more expensive. Or in simple economic terms, we call this inflation. And to control the rising prices, the RBI had to increase the interest rates from 4% to 6.5%. So what does this really mean for you and me? Well, when the interest rates go up, your EMI, monthly loan payments, increases. Getting a new loan for a home, car, or business becomes more expensive. Shopkeepers and small business owners find it really difficult to expand their businesses. Higher price and more expensive loans mean that there's less money in people's pockets. So this eventually ends up slowing down the entire economy. So while India recovered from COVID, that recovery really came with its own challenges. It's like running too fast and then having to slow down just to catch your breath. We've all been there, and you know what that feeling feels like. Now here's something interesting. Indians love to spend. The consumer spending in India was about 56% of the entire economy. That is more than half. And while spending helps the economy grow in the short term, not saving enough creates problems for the future. And that's exactly what happened with India. And the numbers will tell you the exact same story. In 2000, Indian households saved about 84% of their extra income. And by 2023, that dropped dramatically to just 61%. This puts India far behind its Asian neighbors. And while Chinese households save 45%, Indians save only 30% of their income. So why does this matter? Why am I telling you all of this? Well, think about it this way. Savings are like seeds for the future. When a country saves more, that means money can be used to build factories, roads, power plants, basic infrastructure that we need. New businesses can get more loans easily. The country doesn't have to depend as much on foreign money, which can quickly leave, especially during tough times. So why are Indians saving less? There are plenty of reasons for this. First of all, property has become extremely expensive to own, so more people are spending money on housing and rent. Many people buy gold instead of investing in businesses. Easy loans have encouraged more spending on little goods or little smaller price items like smartphones, vehicles, and other goods. While China puts about 41% of its money into building new factories and infrastructure, India only manages 33%. And this gap means that India is creating far fewer jobs and less productive capacity for the future. So without more savings, our country will struggle to build roads, factories, power plants, and infrastructure needed for long-term growth. It's like eating all your grains instead of saving some to plant for next season's harvest. Well, we've all probably heard this. India is a $1.4 billion market. But this is one of the biggest myths about India. So what's the truth? There isn't really one India. according to the report. There are 3 completely different Indias. Let me explain all of them. India 1. This is about 140 million people, or roughly 10% of the population. These earn around 12 lakh rupees or $15,000 per year, similar to those in Mexico. And they are the rich and upper middle class who can afford to buy iPhones, eat at fancy restaurants regularly, and go to vacations in countries in Europe or Southeast Asia. Then there's India 2, around 300 million people who earn about 2.5 lakh rupees per year, or $3,000 per year, similar to those in Indonesia. This is the real middle class who might have a motorcycle, occasionally order food delivery, and buy new clothes during festivals. Then there's India 3, the remaining 1 billion people. These earn just under 80,000 rupees or $1,000 per year, similar to many people in the African countries. They spend most of their money on basic necessities like food, shelter, and clothing. The roti kapda makan. This is why so many companies fail in India. They design products for India 1, price them for India 2, and expect to sell volumes like India 3. That math simply doesn't work. Each of these Indias shop very differently. India 1 buys brands and is willing to pay extra for quality and status. India 2 is very price conscious, but aspirational at the same time. They might stretch for a few special purchases. But India 3 only buys unbranded products and focuses on value and durability. And that's why some of the most successful companies in India understand these differences. These are companies like Maruti, Parle-G, Reliance. They've really cracked the code for all 3 markets. They understand and know which market they're targeting, and they design everything accordingly. Now, you and I have probably heard this constantly. India's middle class is booming, and that millions are joining the middle class every year. But is that really true? Let's take a look at what's happening under the hood. Luxury car sales are growing 4.5 times faster than regular car sales. High-end housing has doubled in the last 5 years. Premium phone sales are up while budget phone sales are falling. Here's perhaps the most revealing and shocking fact. Only 2% of Indians pay income tax. In China, that number is 10%. This means 98% of Indians either don't earn enough to qualify for income tax or are not in the formal economy. The contrast with China is striking. China's middle class grew from 39 million people in 2000 to over 700 million people today. India hasn't seen anything close to this kind of growth. So why does a strong middle class really matter, especially for the Indian economy? Well, they buy a wide range of products helping businesses grow. They pay taxes that fund schools, hospitals, and infrastructure projects. They create stable demand that helps the whole economy. With such a small percentage of people paying taxes every year, the government has less money for important projects like schools, hospitals, roads, and other infrastructure initiatives to improve the country's economy. This affects everybody's quality of life if you think about it. What we are seeing in India is not a broad-based growth of the upper middle class or the middle class, but rather the rich people getting richer. This creates challenges because companies can't grow if they only sell to the top 10% of the country. Well, this is one of my favorites. India wants to become a global manufacturing powerhouse like China, and the government's Make in India program aims to create millions of factory jobs. But despite good intentions, the progress on this front has been very slow. Let's understand the 3 big hurdles on why it is such. First, getting land for factories in India is a nightmare. It can take years to get all the approvals. Legal disputes over land ownership are common. We're kind of like seeing that with our own respective houses in some cases. And the process involves multiple government departments. And contrasting that with China, the government can quickly provide land for new factories in no time. In India, the process is so complicated that many companies and individuals just give up. Second, India's workforce isn't trained for modern manufacturing. Most workers don't have formal training in industrial skills, and our schools focus more on theory than practical skill sets. And lastly, there aren't enough vocational training centers in the country. Third, loans are much more expensive in India. Small businesses pay about 10% interest on loans, while in China, it's just 4%. Think about that for a minute. and what it really means in practice. If an Indian factory owner and a Chinese factory owner buy the same 1 crore machine, the Indian owner pays 10 lakh rupees in interest each year, while the Chinese owner only pays 4 lakhs in interest every year. There is a 6 lakh rupee difference, which means Indian products start with a built-in cost disadvantage. Well, it's not all gloom because the government is trying to help through initiatives like production-linked incentives or PLIs, basically giving cash rewards to companies that manufacture in India. And this has really worked well for some sectors like mobile phone manufacturing. You've seen Apple set up some of its manufacturing units in India. But manufacturing still only makes up 17% of our country's economy compared to 26% in China. So without solving for these basic problems of land, labor and capital, India will struggle to become a manufacturing powerhouse. Well, I'm sure the next one is something you and I are really going to enjoy. And we have all been beneficiaries of this. Have you noticed how we've been able to get deliveries not just in 10 minutes, but many of them are promising it to be delivered in under 5 minutes? Well, this is called quick commerce, and this has exploded largely in metropolitan cities in India. And the growth is mind-blowing. Orders have grown 24 times since 2022. The number of users has doubled every year, and companies have opened over 2,000 new dark stores or mini warehouses in just 2024. And 3 companies lead the revolution. Blinkit with 44% market share is the leader, followed closely by Zepto with 30% and Swiggy Instamart with 23%. But why has this trend taken off in India when this has failed in so many Western countries? Well, the answer lies in 3 unique aspects of the Indian lifestyle. Many Indians shop daily in small quantities because homes are smaller with less storage space. Indian cities are very densely populated, making fast delivery possible. Delivery workers in our country earn much less, making it a very affordable service compared to the Western counterparts. So this 10-minute delivery revolution is completely changing how Indians shop. Big brands like Hindustan Unilever now get 30 to 60% of their sales through these platforms. Traditional neighborhood stores or your Kirana stores are losing customers rapidly, and the service is expanding beyond just groceries to medicines, electronics, and hot food. But in fact, my cousin works at Apple and she tells me that people are ordering iPhones during the big billion-dollar sale or during festivals. And for small shopkeepers, this is a big hit on their bottom line. Many of them have said that their orders have practically vanished and their revenues are dropping significantly. Some experts predict that this industry will grow to 7 lakh crore or $89 billion by 2031. But the question still remains about whether it can expand beyond the wealthy urban areas or if it will remain mostly an India one phenomenon. Well, lastly, this is a domain that I'm very familiar with and where I've spent a lot of my time. India proudly claims to have bought 117 unicorns or companies valued over $1 billion. And these companies have been celebrated as symbols of India's innovation and economic potential. But a closer look reveals a completely different story. Only 91 of these companies are still valued at $1 billion, and 20 of them have lost their $1 billion valuation, and 19 are planning to go public, but they're still worth 37% less than this time last year. And several well-known companies have seen their fortunes change. Baidu, which was once valued at $22 billion, is now facing serious financial problems. PharmEasy, previously worth $5.6 billion, is now below $1 billion. And Dunzo, our household beloved brand, is struggling with mounting losses. They're trying to survive. This reflects a deeper change of the India startup ecosystem. The money flowing into the country has dropped dramatically from 3.2 lakh crore or $38.5 billion in 2021 to around just 83,000 crore or $10 billion in 2024. But this funding slowdown might actually be healthy in the long run. In the boom years of 2020 and 2022, many startups focused on just growth, adding more users and expanding to more cities, even if that meant they were losing money on every order. But today, investors want something totally different. They are asking startups to show that they can make a profit and not just grow bigger. They want them to be more careful with their money. They're asking them to be more healthy in terms of their unit economics and make money on each sale. They want the founders to build real businesses and not just gather users. As it's becoming harder to raise money from investors, especially outside investors, more startups are turning to loans or venture debts to fund their own operations. And in my opinion, that's a great sign of the ecosystem maturing because companies now have real assets and revenue that they can leverage to get these loans and grow. So what's the silver lining? The startups that survive this transition will be stronger and more sustainable. They'll be built to last longer than just for the hype cycles. So what's the real story of India's economy in 2024 and what can we look forward to 2025? Well, it's been a mixture of impressive achievements and significant challenges. The economy is growing, but not everyone is benefiting from it equally. Consumer spending is strong, but savings are too low. Digital services are booming while manufacturing still lags behind. Urban areas are transforming rapidly while rural India moves more slowly. Well, understanding that India is actually 3 different markets and not one giant market is key to making sense of these contradictions. The path forward isn't simple. India's young population gives it enormous potential, but only if the country can address basic issues around education, infrastructure, and job creation. For anyone interested in India, whether you're an external investor, a domestic investor, a business person, or simply a curious observer, the lesson is evident and clear. India offers tremendous opportunity, but the success requires understanding its unique complexities. India's story, in my opinion, is still being written. But by understanding both its strengths and challenges, we can create a better outcome. We can better appreciate the remarkable journey of this diverse and dynamic nation. Well, that brings us to the end of this video, and we had a ball reading the report and extracting some of the key things that stood out to us. We have inserted the link below in the description, so give it a shot and read all of the 188 slides that Blume has put together with so much time and effort. Well, if you've made it so far, first of all, thank you so much. We really appreciate it because we take a lot of time and effort in putting these videos together. On this channel, we record interviews with leading investors and founders and get them to open up about all the learnings that they've had building companies and investing in them between the India-US corridor. Additionally, I spent some time researching some interesting material that might help founders of today and tomorrow build their companies. Everything from things that can help them with fundraising to company building and sales here in the US. I will be bringing to you all of these videos in the coming months. So if you've liked any of our previous videos or this one, I would urge you to go ahead, like the video and subscribe to our channel. And if possible, leave us a comment as well and let us know what we can do better or if there's a particular piece of content that you'd like to see. Me and my team would be happy to sit down, break it down and bring it to you in our upcoming ones. That's it for now. I'll see you on the next video.